Hi, everyone. I'm meteorologist Craig Flint. Wanted to bring you up to date on what has been a relatively easy winter here on this edition of the Weather Academy on YourErie.com. We thank you for logging on. And, it's a La Nina winter, and we knew it would kind of be this way. And we're finally getting ourselves into some winter weather. It finally arrived as we turned the page into January. We have a couple opportunities for some brutally cold air and, yes, some snow, both of the lake effect variety, what we call synoptic snow, which is a widespread storm system. We have one of those that's on the way early next week, but the devil's still in the details. We're going to talk a little bit about that and also what goes into forecasting winter weather. But so far this winter, we know that it's been relatively benign, relatively easy on us. So, in terms of where we rank, when you look at the average to date, we should have 49 inches on the ground. Well, we're obviously nowhere near that. So far this season, we've only had 10 and a half. Now, we have a couple opportunities to add to that as we go through the next couple of days. When you compare it to last year at this time, 27.3 inches to date this time last year. So definitely running behind. And like I said, as we go through the next couple of days with more frequent Arctic outbreaks and the lake still relatively warm, we will have an opportunity to at least add to some of that snow. But we still have a lot of ground to make up, nowhere near where we should be, as I mentioned, with 49 inches, 50 inches. And then you compare it to last year, like I said, only 27.3, and here we are at a wimpy 10.5 so far for this season. But I mentioned we do have a storm system that we're keeping an eye on. It's way out in the Pacific Ocean, 3,000 miles away. The problem here is there's not a lot of data over the Pacific Ocean. There's not a lot of weather balloons that go up. So we really have to wait for this system to crash into the Pacific Northwest, which it's in the process of doing. And then you can see how the track's going to be. Through the Intermountain West, it will dive into the plain states and then really fire up and regenerate to the south and then make the curve up the East Coast. The devil's in the details, though, on where it goes from there, the exact track. Some computer models want to track it a little bit closer to, like, say, central Pennsylvania. Others want to keep it off the East Coast, which if it were the East Coast track, that would be a big snowstorm for places like Philly, New York City, Boston, up to Providence, okay? The track a little bit more to the west would mean that some heavier snow gets closer to our area. But like I said, this is 3,000 miles away over the North Pacific, all right? And there's also another little feature over Florida that we're watching as well. If these two can team up, what we call phase with each other, yeah, there's going to be a storm system along the East Coast going into next week. But until that storm out west really makes its way inland, there's just not a lot of data. So we have to kind of keep an eye on it. Once we are able to input more data into it, we should have a better idea of how this storm is going to track. And when it comes to winter weather forecasting, I thought this might be a good opportunity to look into how we do it. Now, we discussed this before on the Weather Academy, but it's a good reminder. So when we talk about winter weather forecasting, a lot of people say, hey, Craig, dude, how do you forecast this stuff? Well, there's a method to our madness. I mean, we spend hours looking at computer models and numbers and maps to try and figure out how the forecast is going to work out. So when it comes to winter weather, there are lots of derivatives that go into it here. So we'll just kind of take this and break it down. Usually 7 to 10 days, we're looking for what's called pattern recognition, right? Pattern recognition, we're just basically saying, okay, is the weather pattern favorable for winter weather or not favorable for winter weather? That's really the best that we can do 7 to 10 days out. We kind of at least try and hone in on if the pattern favors us getting winter weather. And as we look 7 to 10 days out, it does. But there's more to it than just pattern recognition. So as we close the window a little bit, within 5 to 7 days, we're starting to look at trends on the computer models. What is looking more or less likely? Which track is this more likely to take or less likely to take? And with that system that I was just showing you out over the Pacific Northwest, there are two distinct tracks. One, like I said, takes it a little bit more to the west, inland. Another one keeps it closer to the coast, coming up the East Coast. So we kind of have to watch the trends the next several days to see which trend is looking more likely. If you had to pin me to the wall, I'd say the one that tracks along the East Coast is looking a little bit more favorable, at least to me right now. But the trend is your friend. That's one of the sayings we like to say here in the weather office. So we monitor trends 5 to 7 days out. And then within 3 to 5 days, we start kind of getting into the nitty gritty of timing and storm type. And with a La Nina winter, usually the case where we get everything but the kitchen sink, because the storm track is usually to the west, which means you get a push of milder air out ahead of it, some type of wintry mix, colder air comes wrapping in behind it, then you get the lake effect. But every once in a while, like with this storm coming up next week, the track is favorable for snow, especially over central Pennsylvania. We'll see how far west that storm goes. But we start trying to figure out the timing. When will it start? How long? The duration of it, which ultimately goes into forecasting snow totals as well. And what type of storm is it? Is this storm going to track west, or is this storm going to move a little bit more to the east? So that's what we're looking at 3 to 5 days out. And then within 1 to 3 days, that's when we really start to drill down into the nitty gritty of the forecast details. So the timing, where, who gets what in terms of the heaviest snow, how much rain, is it going to be snow and rain? So within 1 to 3 days, that window is when we start trying to nail down the timing, the when, the where, and the why, so to speak. So that's kind of a snapshot of what goes into winter weather forecasting. It's kind of a truncated version of it. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into it, right? Geography plays a role, topography plays a role. The temperature, not only here at the surface, but upstairs through the atmosphere, that plays a huge role in it as well. So I would advise you to just take with a grain of salt where you're getting your weather information from, because there's a lot of social meteorologists out there that just throw any computer model up and they have no experience forecasting, or they just come out of the woodwork when there's a big storm. So keep it here. We'll keep you posted. Again, we're watching this potential coming up into next week. And, in terms of an overview when it comes to winter weather forecasting, a lot goes into it. We spend a lot of time studying maps and crunching numbers to try and come up with the most accurate forecast. But I'll tell you right now, before I let you guys go, any forecast that is 5, 6, 7 days out and beyond that has a specific number on it, like in terms of how much snow it's going to be 5, 6, 7 days out, don't believe it. Don't believe it. That's not how weather works. There are too many variables and too many other things that can go wrong. So that should do it for this edition of the Weather Academy. Of course, we try to come up with something new every Wednesday to talk about and post here on the BigYourErie.com. And if you have any questions about anything or want to chime in, let us know. Weather at WJETTV.com. That's the email you can reach myself and Tom DeVecchio and Tom Atkins. So if you have any questions or anything that you'd like us to explore, we'd love to hear from you. So, hey, that's kind of a snapshot, kind of a look at what it takes or what goes into a winter weather forecast. That's going to do it for the Weather Academy this week. Thanks for logging on. I'm meteorologist Craig Flint. We'll see you next time.